Bonsoir. The Security Council just had a briefing on the threat to international peace and security. The briefing contents was on Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The briefer was the Director General to the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi. The briefing took place under the presidency of Switzerland. We'll now have two declarations. The first one going to be made by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ignazio Cassis. He will speak on his national capacity, and then he will be followed by the Director General. After the declaration, you will have the opportunity to take some questions. Mr. Minister.
Thank you so much, Nicolas, for your kind introduction. Dear Director General, dear caro Rafael, good evening, everybody. I'm speaking here, as you were already told, as a member of the Swiss government in my capacity as a national representative. Under Switzerland's presidency, the Security Council has just concluded a meeting on the safety of nuclear facilities in Ukraine. The discussions focused on the issue of the safety and security of the Zaporizhzhia power plant. The participants of the meeting, including a representative of Ukraine, were briefed by the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi. France and Ecuador requested this meeting, and Switzerland worked hard, consulting carefully with all members of the Council to prepare it. We were also in close contact with the IAEA to arrange this meeting. Switzerland and the agency share the same concern, the protection of civilians in armed conflicts. This commitment ties in with one of the priorities of Swiss foreign policy, respect of international law. In particular, international humanitarian law. Switzerland has repeatedly made clear its position on the Russian military aggression against Ukraine and the importance of the respect for international law. At the backbone of international humanitarian law, the Geneva Conventions and their protocols are crystal clear in their wording. First, civilians' infrastructures must not be attacked in armed conflict. And second, civilians must be protected from the consequences of war, including in occupied territories. We are all aware of the risks posed to the civilian population when a nuclear power plant is in the middle of an armed conflict. It is our duty to mitigate these grave risks. Switzerland therefore welcomes the continued commitment of the IAEA and its Director General to ensure that the obligation to protect the nuclear facilities in Ukraine is respected. Last year, the IAEA formulated 7 pillars that are indispensable for nuclear safety and security, and these in armed conflicts. Switzerland fully supports this work. Switzerland also supports the IAEA's proposals to protect the Zaporizhzhia power plant by means of 5 concrete principles. This is precisely the approach we need to take in this crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, Switzerland calls on all members of the Council to support the agency's 7 pillars and 5 principles. In particular, we call on the Russian Federation and Ukraine to commit themselves to respecting these 5 principles. I give the floor back to Nicolas for him to introduce the Director General.
Mr. Director General, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Caro Ignazio, grazie a te per il tuo sostegno. Well, it's a pleasure to be back in New York, and today we had a very important session of the Security Council, again carefully prepared through the good offices of the Foreign Minister of Switzerland. You must know that he was one of the first high officials when he was exercising the duties of President of the Swiss Confederation when this war started, who came to see me in Vienna. and committed to work together. Almost 1.5 years later, we are here together on what I believe, and I weigh my words because we have to be extremely careful, what I believe in the midst of this uncertainty and this concern that we have all over the world, a day which has been a positive day for safety and security in Zaporizhia. As Ignazio Cassis was saying, I laid out 5 principles that must be observed in order to avoid a nuclear accident at this moment of increased military activity around the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. I had very clear expressions of support about it, and as a result of this, we are going to be reinforcing the presence of the agency through our mission, our permanent mission deployed in Zaporizhia, and we will be also looking at the important elements included in these principles that refer to the necessity to avoid attacks from or to the plant. They include the necessity to avoid militarizing the facility, and when I say militarizing, what we have in mind is that the plant becomes a place where military heavy equipment is present, deployed, or stored. We are also talking about the necessity to ensure the continued external power supply. We are talking about, importantly, the necessity to protect the safety systems of the plant, and we say it very clearly, avoid acts of sabotage at the plant. And lastly, of course, that this should be upheld by all. So this is why I say that without getting into unwarranted, naive optimism, that today is a day where, Ignazio, together, we have taken a step in the right direction. So I'm happy to respond to any questions, of course, addressed to the Foreign Minister and to myself, if there are any. Thank you very much.
Sorry, please take the first question.
Thank you very much. Thank you both for the briefing. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. My question first is to Director General Grossi.
Yes.
Given the 5 principles, would you say that the data from the monitors should go to Ukraine, as some have suggested today? And what's the next step on these 5 principles? Do you bring them to the IAEA Board of Directors meeting for a
Yes.
resolution?
Thank you very much. It's good to see you again, Pamela. I would say, regarding the second part of your question on what comes next. What comes next is a continuity of what we have been doing, but there's a difference in that I informed, and as I indicated at the Council just now, we are going now to be looking with more detail into the aspects that we are covering in the principles, and that have to do with military activity, possible militarization, attacks on or from the plant, things that were until now not part of the mission that we had undertaken. So this is why it was so important to get this support to do this, which is going to allow us to inform more, but not only that. I think it is clear for everyone that there is a consensus on the fact that no nuclear accident should happen. This emerged very clearly from the discussions right now. There can be nuances, of course, and differences in the way that countries describe according to their national interests, including Ukraine, of course. But I think there is more work. There is a deepening a strengthening of the work of the IAEA here. Then you raised in the first part of your question something is a more technical question related to the information about the radiation situation, which normally goes from the operator to the regulator, in this case Ukraine. And this flow of information has been interrupted by the Russian management in control. We have addressed this aspect with the Russian management at the plant, and we are in any case going to be getting the information and transmitting it to the Ukrainian regulator for their information, which is a mitigation. It's not an ideal situation, but again, it indicates the usefulness of the presence of the IAEA to bridge these gaps and to try to cool down situations that are, of course, very, very complex.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grossi. Nice to see you. Edith
Nice to see you too.
from the Associated Press. Do you feel that you got the commitments you were seeking from both Russia and Ukraine today? And I say this noting that the Ukrainian ambassador said he would like to add several additional principles, including the withdrawal of Russian military and weaponry from Zaporizhia.
Thank you very much. It's very good to see you again. I would say this. We all heard, because of the public nature of this session, what was said. And I believe that it is logical that there are different approaches and interests and goals that countries, in particular Ukraine, which of course owns the plant and is no longer in control of the plant, may wish to have. The important thing is that the minimum common denominator, which are these basic 5 principles, have been widely supported, and there was no voice opposing them. This is very important. This indicates that what we are saying is something no one has a contradictory view upon. It is our wisdom at the IAEA to exercise this with prudence, but I believe this is why I was saying it is a step in the right direction.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, Director. Francesco Semprini with La Stampa. We met in Zaporizhia last September. My question is, within how much time is necessary to implement this 5-point plan? And second, in the medium term, is the creation of a buffering zone around Energodar nuclear power plant is feasible solution?
Thank you very much for the question. Regarding the principles, I'm starting now. Regarding the zone and the possible establishment of the zone, you have been following this for a long time, so you remember that, and this was mentioned today in the debate. We have been discussing this possibility, but of course, it is obvious for all of you following the war, with increasing military activity, any territorial restrictions are extremely difficult to obtain. And military commanders and even political decision makers are sometimes reluctant to agree to accept that there are certain zones, certain areas where they cannot go. So it's very difficult. This is why, precisely because we should not stop what we were doing, we adjusted what we were trying to achieve by looking at the minimum that needs to occur, which is avoid attacks or avoiding certain behaviors. This doesn't mean, and there were voices also in this debate referring or reminding me, I don't need to be reminded, but they were reminding me that it would be good to also have a protection zone. So what I want to say is that we will continue consulting, we will continue talking. We are following the evolution of the conflict every day, because this has a bearing on the security of the plant. But the important thing is to consolidate what we achieved today, and this is my intention.
Monsieur Grossi, bonjour. Karine Auton from Le Monde and Radio-Télévision Suisse. You just said that you praise the fact that these 5 principles receive support from both parties and also that they're starting today. So what are your avenues if one of these principles is breached in a near future?
Merci pour la question. I think, of course, getting to some form of agreement, history proves that at times of war is no guarantee that they will always be scrupulously respected. But first of all, the fact that we have these parameters now, it is very important. It indicates that there is a commitment to do that or not to do certain things. And second, you know, the IAEA has maybe one single power. It is the power of the pen. And we report immediately, and the international community will know immediately from an authoritative source what is happening. We believe that this is a deterrent factor in case anybody would have the idea to attack a nuclear power plant. It's not enough. We need peace. We need the complete stabilization of the situation. As I said, this is a step, but it's not a step towards the abyss, it's a step towards a safer place. Merci.
Hello, Mr. Grossi, Margaret Bashir, Voice of America.
Hello.
Just a few follow-ups. You mentioned about the data going to Ukraine via the IAEA. Could you just comment on 2 other things that were mentioned during the meeting? The Russians said that there were no attacks from the ZNPP and that they don't have any heavy weapons at the facility, which I feel maybe contradicts something you told us previously. So maybe you could comment on that. And Ukraine said that Russia has mined the perimeter of the facility. Could you comment on that, on the veracity?
Well, yes. I would say in terms of the military situation around the area, as you know, it is increasingly fragile. I don't need to repeat what it's public in the public domain. There is more activity, there is talk about more military operations, and this has led to reinforcement of the security situation around the plant. What are we looking at? The IAEA looks at how possible measures of this type could compromise the security and the safety of the plant. And with the 5 principles in place, we are going to be able to interact with the management there and to inform about the possibility of mines outside or inside the plant. For the moment, we don't see heavy military equipment there. We are going to be continuing our reporting about it.
Yes, Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York. I know your job is very difficult at the moment, but don't you think that in your position, like before when you were coming here, it would be much better to spread danger and pessimism and that this war had to hand, because sooner or later, like you say before, sooner or later, a disaster will happen. You know, today you all came here kind of optimistic, they agree. No. So would you say that, are you...
No. I think perhaps I didn't make myself clear. If I'm here, it's because I'm concerned. I've been concerned for 1.5 years. I don't stop. I go into a war zone. And it's not because I'm happy or because I am naively optimistic. I am realistic and I'm very concerned. That doesn't mean that when we have something which is a step in the right direction, I shouldn't say it. We are not spreading optimism. What we are spreading is commitment to work so that we don't have a nuclear catastrophe on top of the tragedy that we are living in the area. And again, these basic principles are a bare minimum that needs to be observed if we are to avoid the worst. Again, the situation we have and the fact that on top of the 7 pillars we had to develop additional principles is because things are getting worse. It's not because things are getting better. is precisely because there is more military activity, precisely because the possibility of a nuclear accident has increased, that we have also increased, intensified the level of our commitment and initiatives that we have, and we are more present there. So I'm sorry if I gave the wrong impression that we are living better days in terms of the conflict. No, what we are doing is giving ourselves a better tool to deal with a very bad situation.
May I add just a few words about this question, because I'm very concerned. If you look at the 5 principles, you just received distributed here. So they are quite elementary. No attack from or against the plant, no use of the plant as a storage for heavy weapons or military personnel. And I mean, these are actually, in normal life, common sense principles. You don't have to go to university to do that. Well, this is not yet common sense in a war. And just the fact that we were able to find this consensus about these 5 common sense principles within the UN Security Council is a small and at the same time a big step, because we were able to have you heard the discussion, it was an educated, it was not a toxic discussion. Of course, we know very well that it is not enough for Ukraine, and we know very well that, well, that many things are there. But from today on, the Director General of the IAEA has a solid background to increase the price of violating these principles. And this is the target of today.
Do you plan to go back to Ukraine anytime soon, Mr. Grossi?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, because it sounds like your proposals are going to require more military expertise of your experts. Is that the case? And if so,
No,
are they?
No.
Well, you're talking about...
Our experts are safety, security experts, engineers, people who have perfectly good and adapted capabilities to monitor and inform what is in the principles.
But it would require them to have some military expertise
No.
from the way you describe
No.
it. Heavy machinery, et cetera.
We can recognize heavy military equipment, don't worry.
So they're developing military expertise being at the plant now. Is that correct?
We have very good inspectors. I think Madame had something. Yes, Pamela, yes? Oh, here, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Murad Hashim from Al Jazeera Arabic. My question on Iran, if I may. Have you reached any agreement with Iran regarding the 3 nuclear sites that under your investigation, there are reports from Iran mentioning that there is agreement and the investigation on 2 sites closed. On the 3rd, there is agreement to monitor the site.
Well, my report on the situation on the nuclear program in Iran is going to be issued very soon. What I can tell you is that this is work in progress. There are a number of issues on which we are working with Iran. On some, we are making some progress. On some others, no. So it's an ongoing thing. We haven't reached any end station, so to speak. It is a very complex array of issues. As you rightly mentioned, we need to clarify the situation on 3 different locations. We also have to implement a joint statement which I signed when I went to Tehran back in March, as you remember, which includes the possibility to have additional monitoring capabilities for the IAEA. So it's work in progress.
Any questions on Ukraine issue?
Just want to know if Mr. Grossi is planning to go back to Ukraine anytime
Yes,
soon.
I'm planning to do that.
When?
Well, I hope soon. I have to ask my Ukrainian counterparts, of course, but precisely because of these new tasks and the need to adapt certain technical things, I'm planning to try to go to Kyiv, if they are so kind to receive me again, and to Zaporizhia. Well, it is also part, as you know, it is also part of my responsibility to talk to both sides, and I have been doing that, and I've been encouraged to do that by all, I believe. So probably Moscow or some other place, but I need to make sure that, I mean, these basic principles are addressing the whole situation, and of course, Russia has a key role in them. So I also expect to be visiting Russia. Yeah.
Last question on my right, maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Grossi,
Yes,
for doing this briefing. Alan Bulcati from RIA Novosti News Agency. My question is if the IAEA is monitoring the situation with the exposure from the using of depleted uranium munitions in Ukraine, which have been supplied to Kyiv.
No, there has been talk about this. Of course, the IAEA is looking at the whole situation. There is an interest on this matter. This matter is regarding more military ammunition than nuclear material per se. So we are ready to look into this if there is a specific request. So far, we have the information about it. And as you know, I think it's important for those who may be listening to us to understand that this does not pose an immediate radiological emergency as opposed to what we could be having in Zaporizhia. It is a risk of a different nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to close.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ignazio.
Complimenti, grazie a te. Sono convinto che appunto, è un piccolo passo, ma